If you've been on the internet for more than 5 minutes, you'll know all about the discourse surrounding women choosing the bear over a man in the woods. Now, we could have a nice, healthy feminist debate about all the myriad of reasons why one might choose the bear over a man in this day and age, but I actually want to take it several steps back and demonstrate that throughout history, in ancient cultures, women have always chose the bear. And I want to talk a little bit about why. Hi, my name is Freya. I'm a PhD candidate in women's spirituality, and I love talking all things women's herstory, women's mysteries, witchcraft, goddesses, myths, and how we can apply the messages in all of that into contemporary women's lives. And I do so by not just using experiential, lived, embodied experiences, but I also do so by looking at the scholarly, academic, historical, what have you, evidence that exists. So, as always, there will be links below. Today, I'm looking at 3 very specific instances of women choosing the bear. And we're going to start in Greece, and we're going to look at the Arkteia at Brauron. Now, I've talked about the Arkteia on this channel before, but I've talked about it through the lens of women's menstruation or women's bleeding rights. And today we're going to look at it in a different way. Much of the scholarship and evidence that exists around the function of particular ritual activity always says something along the lines of, we cannot concretely understand why these people were doing these things and why these rituals took place and what they meant to people. Which, at some level, is true. We weren't there. We can't just trust the sources if they were written down in a book. We have to think about who was writing them, when, why, for what purpose, what lens they were viewing something through, right? But when you zoom out and place certain ritual activity within a broader landscape, and really look at the similarities between culture, time period, across geographical location, patterns emerge. And the patterns become really clear evidence when you study and practice women's sacred mysteries. So, the Arkteia, what is it? The Arkteia was a coming-of-age ritual for Athenian girls who would act as she-bears in honor of Artemis at her temple at Brauron. But it's the myth that inspired the Arkteia that's really sort of interesting to me here. So there is an ancient myth, and it speaks of, ding, 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 the transgression of men who killed a sacred, tame she-bear belonging to Artemis. Now, Artemis sends her sacred tame bear into Brauron. Everybody loves her. Oh, she's so great. A young girl pesters her. She scratches her. In retaliation, the brothers kill her. There is a famine. We go to the Oracle of Delphi. Apollo tells us, in order to appease Artemis, every single Athenian girl must now go to the temple and become a bear and play the bear before she can get married. So some elements of the ritual that I find to be really interesting are the clothing worn, the activities performed, and the location of Brauron itself, and Artemis, of course. So some of the activities were playing, running, jumping, dancing, sport. The young girls shed their clothes, and they reclaimed their wildness. They acted out the role of bears, mimicking their movements, mimicking their sounds. There are vases that depict running girls running towards the altar, towards Artemis, to offer libations. So the bear symbolizes motherhood, protection, goddesses' anger over killing the sacred bear. Brauron is also a place where garments of women who died in childbirth were dedicated. And so there's all of this life cycle stuff that's happening here. And Artemis herself is a hunter and a protectress. So we have our first in this video, not, in all of the land, but we have our first little instance of the transgression of men forces young girls and young women to use their bodies as a means of atonement for male violence. Men killed the sacred bear of the goddess retaliates, and women, in this case young girls, have to bear the brunt of that transgression by becoming bear, by entering into their wildness, by taking on the role of bear, shedding their clothing and running and screaming and jumping and playing. They go out into the wilderness. And whether that's, a real wilderness out into the woods somewhere or the wilderness within, a transformation takes place. Now, I'm going to leave us there for a moment, and I'll get back to that. Now, in Sámi Bear cosmology, the bear is sent into our world by the gods. Bear is a sacred, powerful ancestor who carries knowledge and wisdom with him. The moon goddess actually marries the cosmic bear, and she is the goddess of the winter and the cold night, the shadowy side of the mountain, and magic. The Sámi call the bear Isavoy, sacred. Animals are believed to have the same set of animating agency that a man can possess. They have a language of their own. They can understand our language, and the bear is a mediator between the gods and humanity. Now, there is a bear hunting and bear ceremony that takes place after the bear is hunted. And I'm going to talk about that. But first, I'm going to talk about the myth that supposedly inspires this ceremony. Now, I say supposedly for all the same reasons that I mentioned before. Who's writing it? Who's observing it? When are they observing it? Who are they writing it for? And so we have to continuously filter those things through the information that we have. But let's talk about this myth. So there are three brothers who hate their sister so much. They are so mean to her that they drive her away. She goes through the forest and into the mountains, and there she finds a cave, and she lays down to sleep. She soon discovers that this cave is inhabited by a bear. They fall in love, they have a son, and they raise this son together. Now, Bear gets old, and her brothers have come looking for her. They want to bring her back into the village, into the family unit, into the Cited. And the sister gets wind of this, and so does Bear. And Bear says, I will sacrifice myself. I will sacrifice myself. I will sacrifice myself so I can protect you and I can protect our son. So there are a couple other details here, but essentially what happens is Bear does sacrifice himself. And then the son comes and slays the brothers, except for the youngest brother. And the wife puts on Bear's skin, thus transforming, making the transformation complete, and her son go off and live happily ever after. Supposedly. Now, this myth has some similar earmarks of our myth at Brauron. There are three brothers. They wish to take revenge in some way, but what really sticks out to me with this myth is that these brothers are really mean to the woman in their life. She then has to go seek refuge in a cave, marry a bear, have a bear son, have to watch while her bear husband sacrifices himself for her and her bear son. And then bear son gets to take revenge, and the transformation from young maiden to bear wife to crone, transformed, embodied, wild being, bear woman, is complete. Hold on to those threads of wildness. So what is the bear ceremony? So, because bear is considered to be a sacred being, there are ritual rules that must be observed in the slaying of a bear and bringing bear back into the community and disposing and using of all of bear's body parts. So, we depart for the forest, we go on the hunt, we have to birch the bear, hit it with sticks after we've killed it. Then the bear master returns, bringing bear back with him. There's a feast. Then they ring him in and they immunize the women. Let me break that down a little bit. There's a couple of things that happen when when the dead bear is brought back. So the women can only view the men who have participated in the bear hunt, the bear slayer himself, and the dead bear through a ring of brass so that they are not contaminated and they are protected. They cannot touch bear's blood and they cannot touch the dead body of the bear. And so the men take turns, or they take the time to, to completely skin the bear and to use all the meat and prepare food, and they stretch the bear skin out and leave that to dry, and they also place bear's bones back in a way so that bear can be reanimated. I'm really truncating these things because I'm trying to get to a bigger point. I've got links below. You could read all about it. So during this time, the women are also performing ritual acts. So the wives of the men on the hunt greet them by spitting elderbark juice into their faces. Women cover their heads, and during the next 3 to 5 days, they can only, that's that time period they can only look at bear through a brass ring. And for 3 days, they cannot have romantic relationships with the men. So they cannot be contaminated so that nothing can pass on to the women. In the end of the celebration and the ceremony, eating bear and skinning bear and all of these things, the bear skin is laid out on a stump, and the blindfolded women take turns shooting it with arrows. So to me, this is most sensational, as there is already a pre-existing history of bear wives among the Sámi. So the issue we encounter most often with texts about oral societies, as I mentioned, is dealing with the interpretation of ritual practices by outsiders and the influence of outside forces on these rituals. But I think it's important to note that it's only the married women, the underage girls, but mainly married women, depending on which source you're looking at, who are in the most danger of the vengeful spirit of bear. Not marriage-aged women or available women. Now, maybe we're just protecting the women who are already spoken for, or the not ready women, from being taken or seduced by bear. Maybe bear and his spirit is still available to all available women. After all, the bones are buried by the men so that bear can reanimate. He can come back to the community after his rebirth. Now, there's a lot of purification that takes place here, right? So men wash themselves with strong lye that they made from birch ash. They run 3 times around the iron chains that are binding bear, or rather that are holding the pots of meat. Then they run through the rear door, go out the back door. Like there's a lot of running and jumping. And they also make sounds while they're running that imitate bear. So this is like almost a direct correlation to Arkteia in the physicality of becoming and honoring bear. But in these records, it is the men that are doing this. The wives of the men who have hunted and killed bear has to catch bear while he's doing all of this, catch the men with mittens on, and this sort of play kind of takes place. And on top of that, the women also purify themselves with ashes, and they wail and they take on the role of the bear wife who must be so devastated that her bear husband is dead. And so there's all of this like ritual activity, ritual play, purification, and also this sort of sacred honoring of the bear. Both the men and the women, in this instance, in the Sámi Bear Ceremony, are becoming bear. They are becoming their wildness. They are taking on the spirit, the essence, the role of bear in some way, shape, or form. Now, I also want to mention there's a book by Alice Mann and Karina Kylo, The Woman Who Married the Bear. That'll be below. And there's great textual and historical evidence that suggests that these missionaries, Christian missionaries, and colonizers, and anthropologists, and everybody else who would come in and study indigenous communities were basically men. And men did not care about women's experiences. Men would typically speak to other men, women would speak to other women. And so we get all of these sort of stories and myths and activities filtered through the lens of these people who come in and make judgments about what they find to be relevant and important. And we already know, for example, that for a very long time, historians believed that only Sámi men were shamans. And we now know, archaeologically, that that's not true, something that we have always known. But now there's, evidence out in the real world that tells us and confirms this for us. And so I would like us all to keep an open mind as we're dealing with stories about indigenous people from indigenous environments, indigenous communities, that people came in, looked at them, interpreted them, decided what was important to write down, and then wrote down through their own particular lens. And the myth, this myth that the Sámi Bear Ceremony comes from, is written by Christian missionaries. And so, of course, men have these hunter, rolling around, screaming, yelling, "Oh, I'm a bear" roles, whereas women are throwing ashes on themselves and lamenting. But there's so much evidence that suggests in other societies that women took place in the hunt and in battle as well. And if there's already evidence within the cosmological framework that women are marrying bears, I don't imagine that they never participated beyond these roles that we have here. But I digress. Connecting this to the theme of using women's bodies as a means of rectifying the transgression of men, we will go back to the myth and we will say these brothers were so mean to hurt their sister that she had to go up in the mountains and marry a bear in a cave. But in doing so, she got her autonomy, her power, reclaimed her agency, and ultimately transformed into her wildness. Full transformation, free of the societal bounds that say you must be married and be a good sister and be a good daughter and be a good wife and blah, 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 blah. I'm a bear, bitch. And going to the bear ceremony, if we take it at face value, men go off and they slaughter a bear, and the women have to come back and they have to protect themselves and hide themselves and use a brass ring and shoot it blindfolded with arrows and throw ash on themselves and not sleep with the men. And they have to uphold these ritualized activity that takes place within the body of a woman. On to our third and last instance. So now I want to talk to us about some features of the woman who married the bear myth that comes to us from the First Nations people in southern Yukon. So this tale tells us about a young woman's marriage to bear and, you guessed it, her transformation into one. So there's a tension in this tale that I quite like, as there is in the Sámi tale, between cultural harms, disobedience, transformation, and nature. So, a young woman breaks a cultural taboo by stepping over bear's shit. A shape-shifting man takes her away. He has shamanic powers. He enchants her and they marry. She soon discovers that he's a bear In some stories, this terrifies her, and she feels the only way to survive is to stay with him and bear, ha 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 ha, his children. I'm so sorry. I can't be helped. Her brothers track her down and intend to kill him. No surprise there. So they can bring her back. Bear wife convinces bear husband to sacrifice himself. He does. Her brothers force her into donning the bear pelt. She does not want to, but her brothers deceive her and throw the pelt over her and her sons. Bear wife and bear children kill the brothers, except one, just like in the Sámi myth, and depart to live in the mountains. I guess the brothers should have listened to their sister. And a few things I think about here are, there's something primal, feces, blood, death, birth, transformation, but there's also the breaking of cultural taboos and social taboos and the betrayal of her brothers. But what does Bear do in all of these stories? If we go back to the Arkteia, Bear was chilling. Bear was in the temple. Bear was hanging out with everyone. Bear did not respond with violence until Bear was poked. You know, I think about that phrase, poking a sleeping bear. It's got to come from somewhere, right? So Bear gets poked and pestered. Bear reacts. Bear gets murdered. Now young girls have to play Bear forever? I don't know. Oh, well, I guess the festival doesn't happen anymore. How fun would it be? If anyone wants to bring back Bear Festival with me, let me know in the comments. 2. Sámi Bear myth. What does Bear do? Bear takes in this woman who just broke into his house, you know, Three Little Bears style. Takes her in, marries her, gives her a son, loves her, cares for her, keeps her safe, sacrifices himself for her. And gives her the ability to transform into her true essence. He cares for her in the wild. He helps her navigate the wild and ultimately helps her become wild. In The Woman Who Married the Bear, from our First Nations people, Bear is a protector as well. But Bear is a little trickier in this story. We have to admit, Bear's a little tricky, depending on who's telling the story. Again, we go back to the same problem of oral cultures being translated into written literary text. Who's doing that? Why are they doing it? What is their point? Some stories say he enchanted her, and other stories say she was like, heck yeah, I'm gonna marry a bear. He sacrifices himself for her again, right? And then there's a double betrayal from her brothers. And she is able, again, to take on Bear's pelt, to don Bear skin, and to become Bear, and to go off into her wildness. Every single one of these stories is transgressing these social, familial, community-esque norms. There's some sort of primal bodily fluid involved, whether it's feces, whether it's blood, blood shed, birth blood, water from birth, blood from death. I mean, there's all of these sort of primal things that connect us to the rest of the elements and the rest of the animal kingdom and the earth, right? Bear takes the woman in and becomes the ultimate sacrifice. When we play Bear, like in the Arkteia, like in the Sámi Bear Ceremony, we take on and channel the spirit and essence of Bear, and it reconnects us to our inner wild woman, our inner wilderness that allows us to be free from these social chains that constrain us. And I think that's really interesting. In mythic traditions surrounding bears, women are repeatedly driven beyond the boundaries of normative society by male violence or male social transgression or their own social transgression because they don't want to play anymore. In the wilderness, they undergo transformative encounters with bear being through marriage, metamorphosis, ritual identification, or maternal hybridity. This transformation destabilizes the distinction between woman and animal. Rituals, such as the Arkteia and Sámi Bear ceremonialism, preserve and regulate this liminal feminine wilderness, often requiring women to symbolically atone for male acts of violence against the bear. Women choose the bear because myth repeatedly positions the bear as safer, more reciprocal, and more honest than men. Male violence initiates exile into wilderness. The bear becomes husband, kin, ancestor, initiator, or transformed self. The bear is an alternative to patriarchal husband. Now, these are ideas I'm just sort of bouncing around. And I actually submitted a paper proposal for this idea, just covering the Arkteia and Sámi Bear ceremonialism. And as I bounce these ideas around, there are a few things that become clear, right? I already know there's going to be people like, not all men. If it's not for you, it's not for you. If you feel the need to tell me not all men, it's for you. Okay? Men get so angry when women choose the bear or say, I'd rather be stuck in the woods with a bear than a man. Because a bear is going to act like a bear. And in every one of these stories, the man tricks his sister. They trick his sister. The only myth where the men stand up for their sister is in the Arkteia. They're like, oh no, the bear attacked my sister. I'm gonna go kill the bear. Irregardless of that, they are still killing the sacred bear for acting like a bear after the sister didn't behave so well. Putting the Arkteia aside for a moment and looking at, bear marriage, right? Ooh, wait, hold on. This is why it's helpful to talk these things out loud. The Arkteia is a coming of age ceremony. Yes, scholars will, they disagree about its precise whatever. It is a coming of age ceremony. And the myth that inspires it has a young girl behaving poorly and she needs to learn a lesson. That in and of itself is a coming of age story. And then the ritual that precedes after is a coming of age ritual, where to atone for your mistakes and your ignorance, you now have to become wild, become bear. Let's set that aside for a moment while I let that percolate in my brain. Men lie to their sisters. Men outcast their sisters. Men trick their sisters. Men kill bear. And sometimes they try to harm the bear children as well. men are tricky and they lie in these myths. And these myths and these rituals and these ceremonies, they live in our blood and our bones and our memory. Bear will always act like bear. And he'll even sacrifice himself for his wife and children. He allows himself to be slain by the brothers who have transgressed against him and his wife, so that she ultimately can transform into a fully autonomous, wild woman. And that is why women choose the bear. Because bear allows her to be herself. Bear allows her to be free. Bear allows her to go off into the wilderness without anyone telling her what she should do with her life and how she should behave and who she should be around and how she should love. Bear is a transformative, initiatory being who presents us with sacred change. It's pretty cool. So I want to leave you with the song, the Sámi song that was sung after the bear was slaughtered. But before that, I want to tell you that on May 19th, I am hosting a really cool workshop on a Sámi myth called The Daughter of the Moon and the Son of the Sun. And we're having this conversation through the lens of consent and consequences. And it's happening with the International Society for Mythology, and that link is below. It's only like $20 or something, so I hope to see you there. I'm also presenting at a conference in June, the She Divine Studies Conference. That link is also below. And most importantly, well, two things. You can always take workshops and classes with me through Grief Unbound, through the Center for Mind Body Balance. All of that is below. You can sign up for women's circles, and you can sign up for my grief movement class, all of those beautiful things. You can contact me at any time to set up rituals for your own organization, rituals for yourself, spell work for yourself, whatever you need. And I'm this close to completing my dissertation research, and because of the state of the world and federal funding, I no longer have any. And so I've started a GoFundMe to complete my dissertation research, and that link is also below, and any amount helps. Truly it does, and sharing also really helps. So this song would be sung on our way back. I've got it written down. I'm not going to give you explanations for things. You'll have to send me an email or comment below with questions, and then I'll give you explanations. Dear defeated one of the forest, give us perfect health. Take your catch to the storehouse. Bring 1,000 when you come, 100 as prey. Clearly, I come from the gods. Very happy with a catch, as if without wonder, without trouble. Gave a gift, provided money. When I come home, I'll celebrate for 3 nights. Across valleys, roadless mountains, he drives the evil one before him. Chaos in the forest. Your torches still come to the storehouse. I honor you afterwards. For a year with the prey of your scythe, so that I won't forget the correct song. Therefore, come once more. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. And let me know what you want me to talk about next time. Okay, bye.